Hi, Bucknuts readers, subscribers, fans of all kinds. I'm Patrick Murphy here with Dave Biddle, 24 Sports and Bucknuts represented. We're here talking today about Ohio State football, and we haven't done much of that of late. There's been a lot of basketball talk with the way that team's played, but with football getting started here, we learned the other day the start date, and so we figured it'd be a good time to start the conversation up and give some thoughts. Take some of your questions. If you have them, feel free to post those in the comments. We'll answer as many of those as we can. And we'll hit on a number of topics today. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I was just making sure there was no business-related material here from our Slack channels. I got the Slack notification. I'm doing great. I love knowing that we're 2 weeks away from spring ball, at least 2 weeks and 1 day away. It's very exciting. I mean, sometimes maybe from a media and fan perspective, spring ball can be overrated. I don't think it's overrated from the team perspective. I believe the old mantra that, you can't win the national championship in spring, but you sure as hell can lose it. So I think it is important for the team. But this year, I think it's going to be, it's not going to be overrated by the media and fans because it was taken away from the team last year after just 3 days. So I think there's going to be a little extra juice this year in spring ball and plenty of position battles, none more so than at the quarterback position as football media guys, as football fans. Nothing intrigues us more than a good quarterback competition on our favorite team. We have one in spades this year, so it's going to be a lot of fun, Patrick.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that for sure. Just a reminder, if this is your first time watching these, please like, subscribe, depending on which follow whichever streaming service you're watching us on. And if you have any questions about the football team, spring practice, coaching changes, anything like that, just post them in the comments. We'll try to get to some of those throughout. So Dave, you started to hit on it, the quarterback competition. We're going to hopefully, at least here, maybe get to see our first real bits of this when practice opens here. Was it March 19th? So yeah, 2 weeks. And running through the spring game is loosely scheduled, and I think it will be April 17th. But the quarterback competition, you and I have talked about it a lot, both on the BM5. We've talked about it ourselves. We've both written about it. I think we're kind of both in agreement that CJ Stroud is probably the favorite, but all three guys probably have a shot just because they're all inexperienced. Are you in alignment with me there?
Yeah, as you know, I mean, I'm on record saying I think it's going to be CJ Stroud's job. I also am on record saying there's no way on God's green earth that Ryan Day is going to reveal that to the public after spring. Why would he? He's going to know. If he doesn't know for sure who his quarterback is, he's going to have a good idea at the very least, in my opinion. And I bet he will know after spring ball. He probably knows right now, for being honest. But he's not going to reveal that to the public. That's what any smart coach would do. Push that competition into the fall. Why would you not do that? When I say fall, push it into summer camp is really what it is, preseason camp. You don't want to really push it into the fall and have musical chairs. That never works out in football, as we know. Very rarely, I should say. There are exceptions to every rule. So I don't think we're going to have a verdict at the end of spring, but I think it's going to be CJ Stroud. I think he is going to be the guy when they take the field for that Thursday night opener at Minnesota. I do think it's going to be CJ Stroud, but I also would not be surprised if it's either of the other two guys. I'll be mildly surprised if I'm picking CJ Stroud, but Jack Miller is very talented, and Kyle McCord was handpicked by Ryan Day. And not just that, when Ryan Day had his pick of the litter, he picked Kyle McCord. And he could have had J.J. McCarthy, who's now at Michigan, 5 stars, actually ranked higher than Kyle McCord. It's really, it's just, they're so, they were so close on the scale. I think what were they, 2 spots off or something like that? So you're splitting hairs at that point. But the point is that Kyle McCord was, even though he's a true freshman, he enrolled early, handpicked by Ryan Day, and he's going to be in the mix. But I do think it's going to be C.J. Stroud in the end.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about the lack of experience of these guys. Obviously, Kyle McCord has not even been in a college game. He just got on campus. But CJ Stroud, Jack Miller each played in roughly 3 games last year. I think Stroud got in 3 or 4, and McCord got in 2, or Miller got in 2. So that is certainly a factor. We haven't even seen these guys throw a football in a college game, and you and I haven't really. I don't know if we've seen these guys throw at all, except maybe on video from practice before the bowl games, just with the way things have worked out. I do think, and you made this point a little bit, Ryan Day did handpick all three of these guys. And Jack Miller was the first, but then CJ Stroud just kind of emerged. And then, Kyle McCord, he went out and found him for the next class. This is what you want in a situation like this, though, right? I mean, if you have to have a guy like Justin Fields leave early, you want to have a quarterback battle where, maybe one guy seems like the favorite, but you're probably not going to go wrong with any of these three, it seems to me. I mean, I haven't watched a ton of these guys play just because of where they were based on, where we are in Ohio, but watching the film and things like that and talking to people about them, it seems like the winner of this quarterback battle is almost inevitably going to be successful, especially with what he's going to have around him. And it may take some games, it may not be Justin Fields out of the gate, but you've got three really talented guys here, right?
Absolutely. And you broke that down very well, Patrick. I mean, what you do is you just increase your odds that you're going to have a really good starting quarterback, not just a competent one, but a really good one when you have three guys that are talented going at it, not just two. It's just simple math. You add to your odds there. And this is a quarterback friendly offense. These guys are all talented. Whoever emerges as the winner of this battle, again, I think it's going to be Stroud, but we'll see. That means that they're going to be successful in this offense. This Ryan Day offense, we've seen it. I mean, JT Barrett, as much as, some fans like to pick on JT Barrett, he had his best year in 2017, and that was Ryan Day's first year here. And then we saw what he did with Dwayne Haskins in 2018, what he did with Justin Fields the last 2 years. And I think, CJ Stroud's going to be next in line there, or whoever takes over is going to be successful. And I cannot imagine a better scenario when you're losing a guy like Justin Fields, who is, in my opinion, going to be a top 5 pick. I know that's now maybe a controversial opinion. Some people think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to fall any further than 7th. I think that's the furthest he could possibly fall is to the Lions at 7. I don't think the Lions would trade the pick. I think they would just take him and use Goff as a bridge. But I digress. When you lose a phenomenal quarterback in Justin Fields, who's going to be in the discussion of the best quarterback to come through here, and that's saying a lot, I cannot imagine a better scenario than this when you're losing Justin Fields, where you've got three guys like this going at it. And like you said, and as I echo your sentiments, I will be shocked if whoever wins this job doesn't have a successful year as a first-year quarterback. Will they be a Heisman finalist? Probably not. They could be. But I think at the very least, they will have a successful season as a first-year quarterback, meaning like all Big Ten caliber. At the very least is what I expect out of whoever wins this job. And perhaps more than that. Perhaps CJ Stroud could be a Heisman finalist. I don't think he's going to win the award, but I expect at the very least a all Big Ten type of season from the starting quarterback.
When projecting a little bit beyond this year, but you can't talk quarterbacks at Ohio State right now without thinking ahead because of the way Ohio State's recruiting. And Kyle McCord, 5-star kid coming in, but Quinn Ewers is waiting in the wings down there in Texas. And so whoever wins this job, in your mind, how big of this season is it before Quinn Ewers comes in? Obviously, he's going to be a freshman, and it takes some time. But whoever wins this job, are they just keeping that seat warm for Quinn Ewers in your mind, or is it a situation of he's going to have to sit and wait regardless of him being arguably one of the best commits Ohio State's ever got?
Yeah, it's crazy as it is to sound, because he would be the highest ranked recruit Ohio State's ever got at any position, let alone the most important position in football. You could argue the most important position in sports, period. Maybe other than starting pitcher in baseball. I mean, it's crazy. Because if you're CJ Stroud, you're thinking if you win the job this year and you play well, then you're coming back as a junior. You have 2 years in the program, 1 year of starting experience under your belt. Ewers is coming in as very talented, but he's 2 years younger than you. And then what I think probably even what Ryan Day's thinking, if Stroud's going to be the guy, is Stroud starts this year, Stroud starts next year, maybe Ewers is in the mix. One of those guys would probably transfer then if Stroud wins the job. Not this year, but by 2022, maybe Jack Miller or even Kyle McCord. I think Jack Miller would be more likely would transfer. So then you'd have those three, whoever doesn't transfer, plus CJ Stroud, plus Ewers going at it in 2022. And then if you're CJ Stroud, you're thinking, I'm going pro after that season. So then Quinn Ewers as a second-year guy, similar to what happened with Stroud and now perhaps Miller, you kind of have that first year where you get acclimated, compete for the job. If somebody gets hurt, maybe Ewers could be the guy. I don't see Ewers coming in and beating out Stroud in 2022. I think that's going to be Stroud's job for 2 years. And then Ewers or McCord, you never know how it's going to work out. I mean, Tate Martell wasn't ranked as high as Quinn Ewers, but he was still a 5-star prospect. You never know how it's going to work out. But I think right now, if I had to guess, it's going to be Stroud the next 2 years and then Ewers after that. But I feel like I'm being disrespectful to Kyle McCord here. I think the world of him. I mean, Ryan Day handpicking him, and he, as you said, he handpicked all these guys. But the McCord is when he had his hand picked. He could have picked anyone in the country, it seemed like, and he picked McCord. Ewers, it was like no brainer. It's like number one. Ryan Day thought he was number one. Everybody thought he was number one, and Buckeyes were fortunate enough to land him. McCord's interesting to me because even though he's very highly ranked, there are guys ranked higher than him, and Ryan Day handpicked him. So McCord's going to be in the mix at some point for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's worth reminding people that Ohio State does their own evaluations on players. So, just because I think he's the number 7 quarterback in our 247 sports composite, Ohio State may have their own chart, so to speak. And I want to thank everyone again for joining us for this Bucknuts Live, as we're calling it here. We're chatting some football, which feels nice, given kind of the way this season went and whatnot. We're going to have spring football, and it starts here in 2 weeks. Let's move on to some other positions, and we can kind of pick and choose what we talk about here. One I do want to hit on, and I'm actually writing about this. I've got a draft ready. I'm working on is with the running backs, and I know you wrote earlier this offseason about what Ryan Day's looking for in a running back, and this is an interesting position to me because, like last year, there isn't a clear Ezekiel Elliott, J.K. Dobbins coming back. Now there may be that guy, ready to emerge, but what we've seen from this running back room is a lot of Master Teague, and as good as that has been in Big Ten play, it hasn't been good enough when they've gotten on the college football playoff stage. Now, he did score 2 touchdowns against Alabama, but you compare that to what Trey Sermon was able to do against Clemson and even the games before that. I think you can just see that there's a difference there. And that doesn't mean Master Teague can't be a good running back for Ohio State. I just think at this point, you haven't seen him be that elite guy. Obviously Marcus Crowley's been hurt. Steele Chambers hasn't gotten a lot of run. And then you have Mayan Williamson, who just started to play a little bit last year, flashed a little bit and could certainly do some things. And then the 2 freshmen coming in, Travion Henderson, the top running back in the country, I believe, and Evan Pryor, but another highly ranked guy. So as you look at this running back room right now, what do you make of this? How do you think it plays out? Is this something that you see similarly to the quarterbacks, where going into fall camp, summer camp, whatever you want to call it, we don't really have an idea of who's going to be the guy or if there will be one guy? Or do you think somebody emerges here in spring and kind of takes the reins heading into the summer?
I think it's going to be somewhat similar to what happened this past season, where they will go into the season with running back by committee, but by midseason, someone will emerge. And really midseason this year is by the end of the year with Trey Sermon, but it was really only 5 games in when he had his breakout at Michigan State and then exploded for the school record against Northwestern and had a huge game against Clemson, and then unfortunately got hurt against Alabama on the first play. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I think you don't like when people talk about Murphy's Law, do you? That doesn't really have a good connotation, does it, my friend? But that's what it was for Ohio State against Alabama. Man, with guys being out, Sermon out the first play, just and you're playing against the best team in the nation, not good. I do think it'll be similar to that. I think eventually it's going to be Travion Henderson's going to have a huge role. I don't know if he's going to start from day one. I think what's going to happen to that, what's going to happen is we're not going to know after spring, just like quarterback. He's going to push it into preseason camp. And then I think that Thursday night opener at Minnesota, Master Teague might get the first carry, might get the first series. But I think Mayan Williams is going to play a lot. And I think Travion Henderson is going to play a lot. And if Marcus Crowley is healthy, which is a big if because he tore the ACL at the end of his freshman year in 2019, then had the setbacks, really wasn't able to play much this past season. But if Marcus Crowley is healthy, I know they like him. So he's kind of a wild card there. And Evan Pryor's a guy I think we forget about. If it wasn't for Travion Henderson, we'd all be talking up Evan Pryor as one of the best running backs they've landed lately as far as ranking. But I like Mayan Williams. I think he's going to be a contributor for sure. And I like Travion Henderson. I think those 2 guys, in my opinion, have the best chance of being the main running backs when we look at it let's say by the time they're playing Penn State and by the time they're playing Michigan at the end of the year. But I think Master Teague will get the first team reps to start out spring and perhaps first series with the offense against Minnesota. But I'll be surprised if he's the starting running back all season in 2021. I think either Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams, and maybe more likely if he can prove he's a good blocker, as you pointed out, it's going to be a big thing. You can't just be a home run hitter and this and that. You can't just be a good running back, meaning when you have the ball. And you have to take care of the ball, and you have to be a good blocker. If you can't block, you're not going to play. So, but if he can get that blocking down and prove, and that just comes down to toughness and will, and I think he has that. And sometimes you just got to that's something you can kind of teach with running backs. They're tough, but they might not be used to taking on linebackers, especially not Big Ten linebackers. So sometimes you have to teach that. Show them film of Ezekiel Elliott. That always helps.
Yeah.
But I think Travion Henderson is eventually going to be probably the guy if I had to imagine. But I like Mayan Williams too.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me when we talked to Ryan Day last time, and that was early February, was he mentioned ball security, he mentioned blocking, but he just mentioned versatility. It sounds like they want kind of an all-around back who can do a little bit of everything, and that's what Ezekiel Elliott obviously was, J.K. Dobbins was, and I think that's what they hope they've got in at least one of these two freshmen, if not somebody else on the roster, just with the hype around those two guys. Dave, if you're going to pick another position on this team that you're really interested in watching this spring, the battle, what is it? What position are you really looking at, assuming we get to see much this spring?
Yeah, let's hope we do. Even if we can maybe watch virtually, I might reach out to Ohio State and ask, listen, can we even just get have a day when we have the all 22, or we'll take half of it. We'll just take 11. We'll give us half of it. Sometimes it'll be the all 22 if they're on a certain hash. But no, a linebacker is one that I'll be paying attention to. There's different ones. Running back's big, quarterback's big, but I'll go. We've already talked about we haven't talked about linebacker, but linebacker's a big one. But I will give the edge, in my opinion, to corner. I'm really curious about corner because I think linebacker, they have enough guys there, and not just bodies, but talented guys, that they're going to have three guys that emerge. That kind of like what we're talking about at quarterback, they have three guys. One of them is going to emerge as a really good player. At linebacker, when you have Taraja Mitchell and Dallas Gant and Kayvon Pope and Craig Young and all these guys like Cody Simon and Mitchell Melton, three of those guys are going to be good linebackers. Reed Carrico's a true freshman's already enrolled. You got other guys in there, Eichenberg. They're going to have three good linebackers. I'll go with corner. I'm big on Sevyn Banks. And I'm not even talking about safety because I think Josh Proctor's going to have a big year as a senior. And I think if they go two safeties, I think Ransom's going to be big time as a sophomore.
Yeah.
But at corner, I'm really curious to see, first of all, if I'm right about Sevyn Banks, if he can step up and be that lockdown corner, I think he can be as a second-year starter. We see it all the time where guys at Ohio State struggle their first year as a starting corner, even if they're a junior. People are like, oh, this guy's no good. And then look what happens his senior year or whatever, his second year as a starter. He breaks out, and I think that's going to be – and Sevyn Banks even started playing really well toward the end of 2020. So I think Sevyn Banks is going to be really good. But what's going to happen behind him? I like Cam Brown, but he's coming off a very serious injury. Yeah. As we know in sports, Achilles injuries are one of the toughest to come back from, especially when you're a speed merchant like him, who one of the fastest guys on the team at 4.3. Some say he was the fastest. How fast is he going to be coming off that injury that happened against Indiana in, I believe, October? Was it early November maybe?
Penn State.
Penn State. You're right, not Indiana. Penn State. They could have used him against Indiana, right? Maybe they wouldn't have given up 9 million passing yards. Thanks for the correction there. So that was, I believe, either the second week of the season. So I believe that was I think that was Halloween. So late October. So hopefully he can come back. It sounds like athletes are coming back about 10 months after that. So hopefully he'll be okay. But I'm curious about some of those younger guys, man, like Legend Cavazos, Ryan Watts. I wish some of the other true freshmen were here early. The one that is Denzel Burke. Cameron Martinez is the guy that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I think he can be a good slot corner. I'm really curious to see how Legend Cavazos and Ryan Watson and Denzel Burke, and are they ready to step up? Tyreke Johnson's a guy that it's now or never for him. He's a fourth-year junior, former 5-star recruit. Doesn't seem that physical and doesn't seem that fast. It's like you better be one or the other. I mean, he's got good size, but he doesn't seem that physical, and he's not very fast. He's not slow, but he's not a burner, and it makes you wonder why he was a 5-star recruit. Maybe the light will come on for him this year as a fourth-year player. So corner, they need guys to step up there behind Sevyn Banks. I'm going to be curious to see who. Cam Brown's not going to be out there, but that's why I'm looking at some of those younger guys. Ryan Watts, Legend Cavazos, and those guys.
Yeah, Tyreke Johnson's an interesting one. I've had him described to me as a talented kid, but just for one reason or another, it hasn't clicked in Ohio State's defense. Maybe he would have worked out better in another defense. I don't know. But, that is an interesting one. While we're on the defensive side of the ball, we've got a question that I think kind of fits our talk about position battles here. What defensive lineman will have a better year, Zack Harrison or Tyreke Smith? And that comes from Christopher. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments here, and we'll try to answer them. Dave, these are two guys you need to probably step up this year. And we saw it from Tyreke Smith at the end of the year. We've obviously seen Zack Harrison emerge 2 years ago as a freshman, had a really good season, similar numbers to Chase Young his freshman year, but just didn't seem to put it together for an encore as a sophomore. What do you make of those two defensive ends? Who might have a better year in your mind?
I'll be surprised if it's not Tyreke Smith. I expect big things out of him as a senior. And Zack Harrison, I still have high hopes for him, but he needs to prove it. Tyreke Smith, to me, he's always been a guy when healthy. The coaches talked up, and I remember his true freshman year of 2018, third play of the game he was out there. First series of the season, he was out there third play of the game. I'm like, wow, that says a lot about what the coach. And that D-line was pretty deep in 2018. So, and we saw it, like as you mentioned, Patrick, we saw it towards the end of last season. Tyreke Smith really started to step up and be that guy that was a force off the edge. I really thought he was their best defensive end last year, even better than Jonathan Cooper. Had a really good year as a fifth-year senior, I thought. Played his best football for sure as a Buckeye Coop did. And I thought Smith was better than that. They really missed Tyreke Smith against Alabama. We know they missed Togi Guy, but they missed Tyreke Smith too. Zack Harrison, I still think he's going to have a good season. I think maybe this woke him up, but I think Tyreke Smith's going to have a better year.
We've got a celebrity question here. Friend of both of ours, Timmy Hall from 97.1 The Fan here, asking about the receivers. Thanks for stopping in, Tim. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and apparently Dave will be on the show too. But about the wide receivers, I think he says he thinks Fleming will eat a bit and show his brilliance. The wide receiver room is interesting to me because Chris Olave coming back means that the vast majority of their receptions last year are back. And when I say vast majority, it was like 71% of receptions went to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, which is a very high number when you consider the talent in that room. Now, I know a lot of those guys are young. Tim mentions Fleming, Julian Fleming, the highly regarded receiver. They had a number of highly regarded freshman receivers, right? G. Scott Jr., Jackson Smith, and Jigba. But those guys never really got the chance to emerge. I think the way the season played out, no preseason really, none of those early games kind of get them in the rhythm, really hurt those guys. And we saw little bits and pieces, flashes. But, this is a room where I think the ball, especially with a younger quarterback, the ball may spread out to different guys a bit more this year. And I think you need, if you're Ohio State, you already have another class coming in of talented receivers. You're building on a 2022 class. I think you need to start getting the ball to a variety of guys, don't you think? Just to keep guys happy, if nothing else.
Oh, they're going to rotate more at wide receiver this year. And one thing that happened last year, as we all know, instead of playing 15 games, which they would have in a typical national championship game season where you make the national championship game, you're playing 15 games, they played 8. And they had games where there should have been blowouts that weren't, like Rutgers, where they would have had chances to get guys in the game. So even the condensed schedule, they had games where they should have been blowouts that weren't. Michigan State was one of the few exceptions. They had a bunch of guys out. So those young receivers like G. Scott Jr., for example, and Fleming, they would have got a lot more playing time in a typical year. And they're going to get a lot more playing time, not just in garbage time, but when the game is on the line. But I will say this, and I'm high on all those guys. I mean, Mookie Cooper's gone now, so you're talking about 3 guys now out of that class. I like all 3 of them. I like
top 10 guys.
A lot. I like G. Scott, and I like Julian Fleming a lot. Here's who I think is going to be the best out of the 3, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And if I had to go second, I might go G. Scott over Julian Fleming. I know, an embarrassment of riches. Julian Fleming was the #1 ranked wide receiver in the country, but he is a little bit raw. Now, I've heard he's had some trouble in practice, always being consistent catching the ball. He can get better at that, and he will. He was a run-oriented offense in high school. I think Smith and Jigba is going to be the best of that group. And they tipped their hand last year. He had a considerable more amount of snaps than G. Scott Jr. and Julian Fleming did on offense. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba was really their number 4 receiver behind Jamison Williams, who's the number 3. I think Smith and Jigba is now going to be 3rd on the team in snaps at wide receiver. I think he's going to take another step up above Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams is still going to play a lot. G. Scott Jr. is going to have a bigger role. Julian Fleming is going to have a bigger role. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. of the true freshmen is going to play the most out of the other great 3-man recruiting class that Heartline brought in, this one being a 3-man class coming in, not just as it stands. So I could be wrong. I'm high on all those guys, but I think Smith and Jigba is going to be the guy we look back on. It's like, okay, he was the best one of that group.
Yeah, you mentioned G. Scott. I don't believe he recorded a catch as a freshman, which, if you're not on the field a ton, it's hard to do, especially with the way the targets went. And we'll do another question here before I ask you the last couple things. And I think this is just one everyone is kind of talking about this offseason. But will the Buckeyes see a dramatic improvement on the back end of the defense this year? I think that has to happen, doesn't it? Although you made it to the national championship game, you ended up with the 122nd ranked defense. That's out of 127 teams. So not good. And, you saw what happened when they played good offenses. Indiana tore them up, won that game. Clemson, where Ryan Day refers to that one is he likes what they did. I go back and watch the film, and I have to think that's coach speak because, the way Shaun Wade was picked on by Cornell Powell, some of the other passes, Ohio State won comfortably. But Clemson was able to move the ball, and Ohio State did get stops, but Clemson moved the ball through the air. And Trevor Lawrence is obviously very good. That receiving core is good, but they still torched Ohio State. And obviously, what Alabama was able to do was just a master class of offensive football. And a lot of that credit goes to Alabama, but you do have to talk about Ohio State's defense there. So there's something to, I think, the fact that they didn't have a full offseason with these guys to work with Kerry Combs. And remember, they lost 3 guys from that secondary that were all starters in the NFL this year, and that's hard to replace. So I do think there's something to that. I also think schematically they tried to fit guys into that system that worked the year before, where you play more cover 1, cover 3, that single high safety, and try and keep everything in front of you, keep it simple. I think they tried to make guys fit into that maybe didn't work as well. And I think if you have a full season, you start to see some of those issues early on. Maybe you make adjustments. You're able to practice more regularly than they were this season. So to me, there's a lot of different issues that went into that last year, but I think they also need to figure out who are the best guys that fit into what we want to do and make it work that way. Obviously, they moved Matt Barnes into the role of secondary coach, brought in defensive analyst and Paul Rhodes, who has a ton of experience. So they've made some changes. I know the Matt Barnes hire wasn't sexy, but people I've talked to are pretty happy about what he was able to contribute even before he was focusing on the secondary full time. So Dave, what do you think? How do they fix the defense? Because, it can't get much worse, right?
That is correct. It's one of the worst, if not the worst, passing defense that I've ever seen at Ohio State. They were 6th worst in the country in passing defense in 2020, and they were 6th best in the country against the run. All right, I'm going to get the excuses out of the way before I give you my unfiltered thoughts about the defense. And I think the excuses they're legitimate, is why I bring them up. They're not BS excuses of why the defense struggled. There are some legitimate excuses. I don't recall, while they were talented overall, I don't recall a Ohio State secondary that was that thin and that young. And even like the veterans like Shaun Wade, first time playing on the outside at corner. And and obviously, the off season and all that, where you really didn't have an off season, but everybody dealt with that pretty much. So that's not even really an excuse, but they were thin in the secondary and they were young. Okay. So that's the main thing. And then number 2, they were so good against the run that teams were forced to pass the ball against them. That's excuse number 2. They were so good against the run. I mean, Clemson couldn't run the ball at all. They were forced to throw, and they have the number 1 pick in the draft. And they were able to throw the ball. They're going to get some yards and some points. I thought overall Ohio State played good defense in that game, and Clemson couldn't run the ball. They made them one-dimensional. So that was another reason they're going to have a lot of passing yards. And they, what was my third reason? I had such a good reason too. I'm sure I'll come back to it, but what was I going to say about the very, very, very important third reason why the defense was giving up so many? Oh, I know. Here's the third excuse before I get to my unfiltered thoughts. They played 25% of their games against Alabama and Clemson. They played 8 games. 2 of them were against Alabama and Clemson. That's going to skew the stats. Okay. Yeah. Those are the excuses. I got those out of the way. And I even remember the third one. They've got to be way better. They can't just be better. They better be exponentially better. They cannot be like, we got better against the pass this year. You were terrible against the pass last year. Worst passing defense perhaps ever at Ohio State. Worst one I've ever seen. Unacceptable. Yeah, Indiana had yet negative yards rushing, but Indiana also had like 500 yards passing. I think Michael Penix limping around just threw another pass to Ty Freifogel for like 80 yards. You cannot do that. They have to go from 122nd in the country to about at least top 50 in passing. And I think they've got to be top 20 overall in defense, not 52nd overall in defense. They were the number one total defense in the country in 2019, and they fell to in the 50s in total defense in 2020. They've got to be way better. They've got to be top 20 overall. They'll still be good against the run. I have no doubt about that, even after losing Togi. They've got to be way better overall, top 20, and they've got to be far better against the pass, from in the 120s to top 50. And we would like it to be a lot better than 50, but they can't just be somewhat better. They've got to be a lot better against the pass, especially.
I agree. And I like that you did it that way, breaking it down into those two separate things there, because I think both sides have some validity. They definitely have to be better. There were some excuses, some reasons, whatever you want to call it there. Let's wrap up with this. The biggest area of concern you have for this team heading into spring, and the biggest area you're confident in of this team heading into spring. What would you say on either side for those?
Yeah, I kind of already gave away my concerns on defense until I see otherwise. And I do think, if I had to bet, I do think this defensive staff will get it right, and I think they have enough personnel where the defense will be good. It will be a top 20 national defense, not top 10. I think they can be, and they can battle to be top 10. So, but until I see it, scheme on defense and just overall production on defense and personnel at corner. Again, I think it's going to work out, but I need to see it first. I have no doubt about what I'm going to get to with the offense in a minute. No doubt. Defense, I still have some doubt, but I think it's going to work out. But defensive scheme, just overall defensive production, where you're talking about yards, sacks, turnovers, red zone, everything. And then when I look at a specific position group, corner. I think the linebackers, while they're replacing four guys that were here forever, I think they're going to be just fine at linebacker and better than that. All right, what the strength of the team? Certainly the wide receivers. I mean, I've been covering this team for a long time, and I've been following this team since I was almost in diapers. I don't remember a better wide receiving core than this. I can't believe Chris Olave came back. Isn't that great? They would have been a great wide receiving core even without Chris Olave this year. I mean, this is crazy how deep they are and how talented they are. And they're even veteran with Olave and Wilson coming back, who are two of the best wide receivers in the country last year, in my opinion, even though neither one of them were Bolitnikoff, even like semifinalists probably because they didn't play enough games. And then you have these two excellent recruiting classes that Heartland has brought in behind them. It's an embarrassment of riches there. And then beyond the wide receivers, Patrick, the offensive scheme in general. I mean, if you're a Buckeye fan, don't you have full faith in Ryan Day running an offense? I mean, I sure do. And then he's got the personnel. He's got guys coming back that I didn't expect, not just Olave, but Thayer, Munford. The offensive line's going to be good. They got six guys competing at running back. They're going to find a couple running backs that are good. They're going to find a quarterback that's good. So I feel really, really good about this offense with Ryan Day running it. Kevin Wilson also with having heavy input. Brian Hartland, what he does with the wide receivers. Tony Alford, Greg Studrala, the whole offensive staff. It starts with Ryan Day and what he has proven to be. He is an offensive guru, and I think this offense, once again, is going to be a top 5 offense in the country and battle to be arguably the best offense in the country.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on both sides. Concern, I would definitely say the secondary, but I do have confidence in this staff. It's, like I said, I know that Matt Barnes isn't the sexy hire that maybe some people wanted, but I do think he's going to be a good addition. I think the players really like learning from him, from my understanding. So I think that helps. And I think he's got some good ideas that maybe he hasn't been able to stand up and say as much when he wasn't the guy running the secondary. And on offense, yeah, I mean, as long as they find a running game to some degree, they should be fine. I have confidence in all of these quarterbacks that if they're thrown in the game, if they're the one pick that win the job, they'll handle, just like you expect from any Ohio State quarterback. So I agree with you completely. We're going to wrap up here. We went about 13, 14 minutes longer than we expected when we were talking beforehand, but I think we got a lot of good stuff here, Dave. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we're going to do these more often. If you liked what you saw, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform you're watching on. And stay tuned. We'll post when we're going to do these on Twitter. We'll post on our message board. So keep an idea out there. And once spring practice starts, we'll have plenty more to talk about. This was just kind of a little bit of a preview. So thank you very much, Dave. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon, Buckeye fans. Have a good one.